Action.
Nobody says action anymore. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back.
Hey.
If you've been with us this whole time, then this is your second episode. And if you were weird and decided to start with the second episode instead of the first one, then welcome for the first time.
Oh, also check it out. The first episode, we managed to make it through that entire episode without telling you the name of the movie that the episode was about. So
That was cool.
it's called Between Worlds.
Yeah.
Don't watch it.
Look it up. It's on Amazon. The DVD is $6.96.
The Blu-ray is $6.
Yeah.
They're both.
Yeah.
Whichever you want to do.
Or you could rent it on Amazon Prime Video for $7.99. Personally, I'd rather own it.
I mean, no one wants to own it for any reason.
Untrue. We got a lot of feedback that some people were actually inspired to watch the film.
Yeah, that's really crazy. I mean, with how we went through it, what we described, I can't ever imagine listening to that and then thinking that it's a good idea to go watch it. But good on y'all who went ahead and did that, because, well, now you got to experience what we did, and it was quite a time.
Yeah. So thank you to everyone who's provided feedback from the first episode so far, asked awesome questions. We got a lot of really great feedback on how great our voices are. So that was exciting.
Yeah, we sound amazing.
Apparently.
So, yeah, thanks. It was good to hear from a lot of people that we apparently didn't suck at it for the first go. So it's really good.
And we got to hear from some people we haven't heard from in a long time. So that was really great.
Yeah, it's really weird when you put something out and people that you kind of lost touch with actually pick up on the stuff that you're putting out. So
yeah,
it's pretty cool.
That's neat.
And thanks a lot, guys.
And so I guess the biggest question that I received via private message was asking when Jordan went blind.
Yeah, I feel like this is a pretty common question. Especially if I'm talking about some kind of media or something, in the case of movies, it becomes, I think, clear that I know what actors look like, or, similar ideas. And I think in that episode, I actually even mentioned having sold a truck before that I owned. So I actually lost my sight as an adult. When I was 26, 2016. Yeah. So I was 26. And I've told the story a dozen times or more a month for the last, now 4 years. So, kind of second nature, but the basic gist is I was driving home from work one day, had a little blind spot, just in one of my eyes. And then, later on realized that there's a disease in my, family that affects people, men kind of in their mid-20s tend to catch it about that time. And it took the sight in both of my eyes within, I'd say, 2.5 months. It was pretty much gone. There was a little bit more for, a couple months after that. And then eventually it worked its way to where it is now, which I'm not totally blind. I can still pick up on light and shadows and, occasionally some shapes, but for the most part, all usable vision is gone. Does that about cover it? I don't know.
I think so.
Yeah, I'm trying
From
to think
what
of
you've told me,
yeah,
unless you have any super secret blind secrets.
No, not really. Just over that time, yeah. I mean, it's been a huge adjustment. I mean, obviously, with any major thing like that, the first, handful of months into year and a half, it's all just seems like the world is collapsing around you. But then you kind of settle in, and it's just the new normal. So, yeah.
I think there was some feedback, not necessarily a question, but some feedback from people who had said a lot along the lines of, I'd never thought about accessibility for blind people before. I've never thought about, blind people wanting to watch movies and television shows. And I know that you've talked to me in the past about some kind of, I guess, assumptions on your capabilities, assumptions on like your interests and things like that.
Right. And I mean, I think that's kind of one of the biggest issues facing a person with any disability really is perception and assumptions that people make about what you do, what you can do, what you might like. I mean, it's the old, I think, John Mulaney bit about when a vegan comes to a party or someone that doesn't drink comes to your party and you just start offering them really weird stuff because you just forget how to function.
Yeah.
And it's the same idea is like people have such little interaction with blindness in their everyday life that they just don't necessarily know, what someone's capable of or how to interact with them just in general.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I can kind of speak to that a little bit in not really having known anyone who was blind before meeting you. And I mean, in the beginning, it wasn't ever really a thing. It was just kind of like, oh, okay, you're blind. Like, and I would get really anxious to ask questions. And I still do kind of
right,
sometimes.
yeah. Sometimes you'll like preface a question with, "Hey, can I?"
Yeah.
So if I was to ask a question about something,
Yeah.
yeah, no. And I mean, obviously, like with people you're closer with, you read and understand and like know the intent behind the question and know that there's no malice based, in it at all. But in cases of random people, it's definitely more of curiosity, but sometimes you can kind of tell that it's coming from a kind of a weird place, I guess. But yeah, like with the people you know and love, you know, they start at a much higher baseline than
Right.
just a
They
random
get a
person
lot
off
more
the street.
grace.
Yeah, for sure. But no, I mean, in the case of anyone that's listening, fire away with your weird random questions and I'll answer the ones that I find worthy of receiving an answer from my ivory tower.
Find worthy of receiving an answer.
Well, I mean, Google exists to some degree, but also like if you want an answer to a question about like what my personal experience with something is, then fire away for sure.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, why we partially started this whole thing was that there's just not as much awareness as there should be. I've learned so much over the past few months that I just had no idea that all of these different things existed. And so I think it's a good thing to spread awareness about.
Right. And I mean, the more conscious people are of, differences, the more they can kind of consider the way they interact with people around them. So I think it's important, but also, do it through something ridiculous like Nick Cage films.
Yeah.
So.
Speaking of Nick Cage films,
we watched one.
We watched another one.
Yeah, I mean, he's in it.
Yeah.
For a second.
Well, so just like we kind of went back to Jordan's origin story.
It's Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Dang it.
It's Fast Times. I just didn't. We forgot.
Jordan doesn't like the anticipation, and he doesn't want to forget to say the movie title again. So
we missed it last time. So the film that we watched
mm-hmm.
was Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
So while it wasn't Nick Cage's first film, it was among one of his first films. He had the tiniest bit role in this.
I mean, less than a minute 20 screen time?
Do you remember what I told you he did the first time you see him?
Has a Nick Cage face? I don't know. What? Oh.
So obviously.
Oh,
Ridgemont
yeah.
High. It's
yeah,
a
I
high
put it
school. Okay. You go ahead.
I put it in my notes. I know exactly what you're talking about now. Sorry. we totally talked over each other for a second, but holy cow. It's so good. Go ahead.
Okay, so when we first see Nick Cage, he is taping a sign to the back of somebody on their jacket that says, "I am a homo."
Which, I mean, you never know. Maybe the kid wants to keep it on.
Maybe he does. There's nothing wrong with that.
Nowadays, I feel like that's a very like Gen Z thing to do, is probably just walk around like with that sign.
I mean, I have a shirt that says queer and proud.
These kids are way out, way earlier than kids in the 80s ever were, I think. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like there's probably like some weird, like, you could probably write half a sociology book on like the evolution of like being out in high school, but like Gen Zers that would watch this would have a weird understanding of half these jokes.
Do you feel like you have a weird understanding of half these jokes at all? Or you
I
like bridge that?
I mean, yeah, we're kind of in the middle, right? Like
Yeah.
we were like 90s kids,
Mm-hmm.
and this, so it kind of got ruined for me. One of the things that we'd kind of shoot for is like see if I can guess like when the movie is. I've actually seen this before, so I know that it's like super 80s. But I mean, you could pinpoint the era, that this film was set in from a mile away. It's right there. Every single song hits you in the face with 80s. All the like lingo is very it's 80s all the way through.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it's just well known for especially Sean Penn's role. There are so many pop culture references to it and everything. It's hard to miss.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I feel like this movie's like become like kind of a pop culture thing.
Mhm.
Like you hear, it gets referenced
Yeah.
randomly all the time.
So this one we watched on Stars together. Thanks, Dad and Melissa. Shout out to you for your Stars subscription. And I have not found a single thing with audio description on Stars.
Yeah, it seems like some services are better than others. Like Disney Plus, I would give them like they were actually just awarded something
say,
by
yeah.
the NFB or ACB, something. Basically, good job. You put out a lot of audio described content. Someone that's way better at being in the know on audio description stuff can probably shoot me a comment or something that gives more detail on what that award was. But honestly, even just like scrolling through their catalog, it's pretty obvious that they have so much more audio described content than any other service.
Yeah. And I mean, it doesn't matter if it's a television show, if it's a film from the 70s, if it's
we watched Return to Witch Mountain, like, which is 74, I think, right?
Mhm.
Somewhere like in that range.
Yeah.
And it was audio described, and it has Christopher Lee in it. And if you haven't seen it, go watch it. It is absolutely amazing. They did some remake sequel stuff with Dwayne The Rock Johnson. That whole series is incredible. And if just go watch it. It's on Disney Plus. Please watch it.
And a certain musical that came out recently on Disney Plus is also audio described.
Hamilton, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty good. I mean, the audio description, like so in watching like other musical stuff that has had audio description, it is a little bit difficult because you want to like showcase the music, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you don't necessarily want to interrupt the music with descriptions of what the dances are like, or a character running across the stage or something like that. So I think they did a really good job with the audio description on it, of just kind of staying out of the way.
Yeah. So what was this film called again that we watched?
The film was Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I had seen it before a long time ago. So like I sort of remembered what it was about. I didn't remember that Nick Cage was in it, but now my obsession with him has grown so much that now I know that he's been in so many things that I'd never heard of in my life before.
Right.
And he's super young in this, obviously. So he's definitely hot Nick Cage. Not to say that like in newer films where he's older, he can't be hot. But he's definitely hot Nick Cage, very young. Lighter haired Nick Cage.
Does he have more hair? Because I feel like he started losing his hair pretty quick, right? I mean,
this is definitely when he has like the mop of hair.
Okay,
he's got like, and it's not like long like a la Joe in Between Worlds, which was what our last podcast was about. That was the film.
The name of the film was Between Worlds.
But just kind of like a a mop on top that was just unruly looking.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you can't necessarily say that people get uglier as they get older because like Sean Penn started ugly and stayed ugly. And that dude eventually goes on to marry Jenny from Forrest Gump. And I can't handle that truth. That's not reality that I can be okay with.
No.
What's her name?
Robin Wright.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were married. That's insane.
She is someone who has been like was beautiful when she was very, very young, like Steel
She's
Magnolias. And
way
she
more
is
attractive now.
stunning. Like House of Cards.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That short hair. Whew.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, age doesn't necessarily tell whether or not someone, is more or less attractive. But I guess, so in this, Nick Cage is fine.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He's a fine young man.
So, yeah, Nick appears for, like, Nick, my friend.
My BFF,
my BFF
Nick.
Nicolas Cage appears for I honestly I would say under a minute 20 total.
Mhm.
You get the I'm a homo, he puts that sign on the kid, and then you get a couple slices of him later on because he's hanging out with one of the main characters. He's like his sidekick guy. Right?
Yeah.
Like
one of the sidekick guys. Our BFF Nick is not in this movie too much. Much to our dismay. Also, I feel like there's really no rhyme or reason for which movies we watch and when we watch them.
Yeah, it's
Not that anyone has asked.
Yeah, going chronologically would have been just torture.
A nightmare.
Yeah, but we're not necessarily hitting like worst or best or, any particular, chronologically or anything like that.
We're pretty reliant on what is currently streaming. So
right.
There are a lot of things across all of the platforms that we subscribe to or our parents subscribe to. That
I don't steal streaming services.
Okay. Awesome.
I own all of my own streaming services except for the trade that we made for YouTube and Hulu. So I think I own all of my stream. I give away more streaming services than I mooch. So
you think so?
Easily, yeah.
HBO,
Stars, but those are you watching them while you're in my home.
Oh, you're not watching them with me. You were not watching Fast Times at Ridgemont High with me on Stars.
So yes, however, I don't ever use those services unless you're in my home.
Okay. Whatever makes you feel better.
Whereas like with the people that I have kind of may or may not allegedly have given passwords to my like Disney Plus and similar, that's me providing a service to the world.
The NSA is going to knock on your door.
Yeah, it's whatever.
Or the FBI or the whomever, the FCC.
Yep, them, those guys.
So I guess we'll just kind of hit on some of the main scenes for anyone who has not watched this film before or hasn't watched it in a long time or has just never cared to watch this film before. It's pretty much, I mean, it's your kind of typical, just like 80s, like dick and fart joke, just following some teens around.
I saw it referred to as a teen sex comedy, which kind of hits like it's Super Bad, American Pie, Porky's, Revenge of the Nerds, this,
Right.
Every generation has a handful of them. And they're just whatever.
But like, full offense intended, there just didn't seem to be any kind of climax whatsoever.
Oh yeah, it was this definitely like just meandered.
Yeah.
And there were a couple of like through lines, right?
Mm-hmm.
But no like, protagonist meets, conflict meets, overcoming challenge, whatever.
Yeah. So we open up on a mall, and it seems like everyone in the film either works at the mall or frequents the mall. And I mean, that definitely spoke to my teenage self as a worker and also someone who went to the mall to just hang out because there wasn't really much to do in my small Midwestern town. And there's a conversation. There are two ladies working at a food place, and they are having some sexy conversations about a man who walks in, who we learn is like 26. And Stacy, our main lady, she's super into him and tells him that she's 19, but she's really 15. So that's another running theme so far in our films.
Apparently, yeah. The whole, underage child. They're children. We're talking
They're
about
children.
She's a child.
Yes.
Not cool. Don't do that.
Yeah. There's also Rat, who's across the way at the cinema.
Pretty cool name.
Yeah. He's pretty upset because he's not on the cool side of the mall.
Yes.
That's what I remember from the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, and then we jump to the school where kids are being in school and doing in-school stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And from my perspective, so like a big thing, obviously no AD for this movie, and it is very much that 80s movie where every scene it jumps in with, and in the case of this movie, a killer song. Like the whole soundtrack is incredible. It's just great, hit after hit. But it relies on that very like montagey like intro to the scene that like sets stuff up while the music is the only audio you're getting. So I missed most of this movie.
I think we found ourselves like I would be describing a lot of things and pointing out a lot of weird things, and then we would make notes on the same weird stuff
Right.
that was happening.
Right.
Because like I was basically having to describe like all these different montage scenes, and like they're always like comedy scenes of, guys doing stupid things and
Right.
women reacting.
Right. So we jump to the school, right? And this is where we meet most of our characters that we haven't already met.
Mm-hmm.
Or do we meet everyone at the mall? Or everyone that matters? Do we meet Jeff Spicoli at that point?
I
think we meet him in
remember.
the school in the first time, like classroom stuff maybe. Either way, he's like the character of this movie, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's the one who's referenced the most.
Right, the one that anyone remembers for any reason. He's got like the catchphrasey stuff. He's the surfer kid.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily think there's anything there. I mean, really, we don't get a setup, right?
Yeah, no.
I mean, it just
not really.
stuff happens. Boys chasing girls, girls chasing boys, girls chasing 26-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
That whole.
I mean,
whole deal.
Stacy's what is it called? Like Stacy's story, basically, is definitely the most interesting storyline
Right.
of the film. So I mean, she ends up, going on a date with Mr. 26-year-old Ron Johnson.
Ron Johnson.
Ron
yeah.
Johnson. He gives her his business card, very fancy. And they end up going to a dugout and, getting her dug out.
Doing sex to each other.
Yes.
Yeah. This is her. This is her first time having sex
I believe so.
at all ever.
Yeah.
And we're not necessarily to assume that it's his first time.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
He's a smooth talker, and then
Okay.
he ends up ghosting her. So I would assume that, yeah.
Oh, jump forward. Let's spoil it.
Yeah.
Why he ghosts her just for no reason, or?
Oh, I don't know, because she's not interesting.
Okay. Okay. But then later on, here's what the spoil was in that she gets pregnant.
Not from him, though.
From a different dude?
From a different dude, yeah.
What?
See, this is the thing. Okay, so when we
here we
were
go.
watching, everyone is so generic. So, like, Jordan would ask me several times, like, wait, so this dude did this thing, and now he's doing this thing? And I'd be, no, that's the other dude.
It's a different person. Yeah.
Yeah, like, they're so incredibly generic that,
Right.
like, it just, sorry, mom and dad, for talking shit about this old movie, but Stacy, like, ends up, like, she is with that guy, and then she just sort of like blossoms into her sexuality,
Right.
and
as you do.
as you do, and she just kind of is with any boy who shows her attention, Not that that's a terrible thing, but she went out with Rat next, I think, and he was not receptive to her moves because he's kind of the nerdy high school boy.
Because he's a rat.
But then she ends up getting with his BFF, the ticket scalper.
Okay, yeah.
And that's the one that gets her pregnant. Or that's the one who contributes to her pregnancy because it, takes multiple people.
Right. Right. That was the partner with whom
Yes.
she achieved pregnancy.
Correct.
Okay.
But in like on the other storylines, like her brother gets fired from the All American Burger where Nick Cage was working.
Okay, see, I'll tell you for sure that her brother's name is Brad, yeah?
I think so.
I think it's Brad or Ben or some bullshit.
Yeah.
This guy, I thought at some point in the movie that he was a different character and was confused for a minute. Again, this is audio description. I need it.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that he was hooking up with his sister.
Oh.
Because I got confused about like what character he was and
Mhm.
forgot that like he was her brother.
Yeah. So you thought there was some Game of Thrones going on here.
Daenerys.
Jordan has not actually watched Game of Thrones, so we can talk about that at a different point in time.
That'll be a whole nother cast.
So her storyline, she gets pregnant and she gets ghosted by the guy who
Pregnanted her.
Yes, who pregnant her. And
well, like she comes at him and she
Yeah.
says, "I got pregnant," and he says, "Well, that's a shame. You shouldn't have done that." And she informs him that he did the pregnant to her,
mhm.
and we get abortion talk.
So he says that
Oh yeah,
that she
Get it
has
out,
to
yeah.
get an abortion. She's like, I've already made the appointment. So she's on it.
Yeah.
And she's like, it's $150 at the free clinic. And then he says, well, it doesn't sound so free to me. Ha ha ha. And he goes on about how, I suppose you expect me to pay for it. And she's like, well, you could pay for half of it. Like, that makes sense to me. Like,
We're progressive.
yeah, half.
You gotta,
You contributed half the DNA. I contribute half the DNA. Like, let's just go splitsies on this one.
to each according to their will and ability.
Mm-hmm.
Does the honor.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So that whole bit happens, and I mean, I feel like for the 80s, that's a pretty like
For the early 80s especially.
yeah, like that's some heavy stuff.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. And I mean, they don't seem to make a huge deal out of it. So like her storyline continues and like he's supposed to pick her up and take her to the clinic and he flakes.
right.
And her brother ends up taking her but doesn't know that it's the clinic and he thinks it's the bowling alley across the street, but finds out immediately because she doesn't even walk into the bowling alley. She just like looks and then runs across the street.
She's stupid.
She's not smart.
She's very stupid.
But then like the next scene is just like the nurse just like asking who's gonna drive her home. So there's no like gratuitous scenes about it, like, oh, do you really want to keep or do you want to get rid of your baby and all that kind of stuff that you
She
see
doesn't
in
have to-
so many things.
Yeah, she doesn't have to look at like a 3D ultrasound or listen to its
Yeah.
heartbeat for 20 minutes or like any of that stuff.
She doesn't have. There's no like a 10-day waiting period or anything like that. So they don't make a huge deal out of it, which I appreciated a lot. And the
She does show. I mean, she shows a pretty significant amount of emotion after.
Yeah. And then her brother is really cool about it too, because like he obviously sees her go into the clinic and then like turns around and just like waits for her there. And she like comes downstairs and she's like, oh, whoops, don't tell mom and dad.
Right.
And he's like, of course I won't. Like, it'll be a secret. And he was super cool
Well,
about it too.
he does want to know who
Right.
got her pregnant or whatever.
Who
And
the father.
yeah, and he immediately says, "Oh, you're not going to tell me."
Yeah.
So
I mean, I assume that it's like that protective brother thing. Like he wants to beat him up or something.
yeah, I mean, that's always the big movie trope, right? Is
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna beat anyone up that looks at my sister at all. Like,
Yeah.
well, if you want to, I guess. I mean,
Mhm.
I always just hope my sister stayed a kind of cool guys.
Yeah.
Wore like wraparound like Oakleys and stuff.
Oh, dang.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
So like her again, like her storyline's the most interesting. Like going back, like her brother was dating someone long term, and it seems like he was upset because his girlfriend wasn't putting out, and then he was going through this series of like getting fired from a bunch of places because of his anger management issues. So there's this scene where he's like talking to himself in a mirror and like practicing breaking up with her. And then she ends up breaking up with him and pulling out the old breakup switcheroo.
Yeah, which is, always good. Good way to protect your emotions.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, we can't forget the bikini scene, the scene where the...
Yeah, that's like the scene of scenes, right? Is the red bikini.
Mm-hmm.
And like I don't necessarily have a very like good memory at all, but like I can picture this scene because I was a 16-year-old boy ever, you know, like everyone's seen this.
Same.
But this scene, I didn't remember. I thought this scene actually took place, but this is an imagined scenario.
Yeah, while Brad is pleasuring himself in the bathroom, this is what he's thinking about.
Having a time.
He's having Brad touching Brad time.
Yes. And he gets walked in on by her.
Mm-hmm. And he says, doesn't anybody fucking knock around here?
Yeah. Which, I mean, has that happened to you?
To me?
Yeah.
No.
Same.
I don't think so, no.
Yeah. I mean, it's in a ton of movies, right? It's people walking in on people doing that, or people walking in on people having sex.
There's still time.
Yeah. I mean, you got a lot of life ahead of you.
Yeah.
So
there's definitely still time for that to happen. So yeah, his storyline, he just kind of, he ends up working at the, what was it called? The Mighty Mart or something.
Yeah, they've all got the goofy, like.
Yeah. And he ends up getting held at gunpoint at the end, but Spicoli comes in and kind of saves the day.
Check this out. Another scene that I had absolutely no idea what was happening. I could tell there was a robbery going on because it's, get on the fucking safe and put your hands on the ground and like that whole deal. No real idea of what was occurring though. So I assume that Spicoli comes out of the bathroom and it's like the old like gag of like he opens the door and it bops the guy on the head and like, you did it, right?
So
something like
so like he comes out and he's like, oh, you don't have any towels, and so the guy is distracted for long enough that Brad can like grab the hot coffee and throws the hot coffee on his face.
Man, can you imagine getting hot coffee thrown in your face?
Bull. No, that does happen in Kingpin though.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, a couple of times. I only mention it because I recently watched it again.
Is Nick Cage in Kingpin?
I don't think so.
You never know.
Think of.
Okay, so I mean that's the movie. That's it. I mean that's nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing
There's a big
else.
dance at the end that was 80s-tastic that I loved.
Oh,
the fashion was so good.
You get to hear a super cool like Spicoli rundown of America where he talks about Thomas Jefferson was all like, "That's bogus, dude," which is kind of funny. I mean, most of his scenes I think are the only funny scenes, right? I mean,
yeah, all the other ones seem pretty serious.
Yeah.
Or talking about sex.
Right.
Which I mean is the life of a teenager.
Right. Which, I mean, so we see a couple chunks of like nudity stuff in this, right?
Yeah.
And it's always weird because the people that are being portrayed as nude, we see some breasts.
We do. A couple pairs of them. Yeah,
those characters are 15, 16 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So it's weird because the actors are aged people of some age over 18, but they're portraying children.
Yeah.
It's very strange. But I mean, the movie's also made for children, I guess.
But do you want to know who was underage while that was being filmed?
Nick Cage, right?
Nick Cage. Nick Cage was underage.
Yeah.
Now that we have shat all over this film, do you want to give it a rating, Jordan?
Yeah, 3.
3.
Yeah.
That's also my rating. That
Yeah.
is exactly my rating.
Yeah. It's not good.
No, it just
I mean, there are
kind of
good there are good
meanders.
pieces of it, and I understand why it's like a cultural cultural touchstone or whatever the hell that people call them. It's important to some people.
Yeah.
Some people that like, and I think obviously like anyone that was raised like in that era or went to high school in that era, like
They can relate.
It hits for them, right?
Mhm.
Like it's not. It doesn't mean anything to us as to what it means to them.
Yeah.
So
It was absolutely not as painful as watching Between Worlds, which was the film that we talked about in the last episode.
right, that the name of the film for the last episode was Between Worlds.
It was. Would you venture a guess as to what the IMDb rating is?
Oh, those sons of bitches! It's like a 9.5. I guarantee it. Oh, okay, no question, it's higher than 7.5.
Nope.
Really?
It's very
Wow.
close to that,
Okay,
though.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah. It's a 7.2.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I get it, right? It was like the songbird of its generation.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't, I
Well,
mean,
it was based on a book, right?
yes. Oh, yeah. So we talked about this. Okay. So I read an AV Club article written by someone. I should probably know the answer to that. Written by this woman who goes through like the differences between the book and the movie, which, if you didn't know, this is based on a book by Cameron Crowe. Do you know who that guy is?
No, a director of sorts.
He, I don't necessarily know his full deal, but he like was writing for like Playboy and Rolling Stone as a 15-year-old, like while he was in high school, right? And then he goes all 21 Jump Street, and when he's 22 years old, gets a hold of a high school principal and is asking him if he can do this basically journalistic experiment where he goes back to high school as a 22-year-old.
Oh, it's like Never Been Kissed.
Yeah, like
Drew
posing.
Barrymore.
Yeah, posing as a kid, right? So
Mhm.
the book that he wrote is, according to this AV Club article, which there are some excerpts of the book in it, and it's just a clunky book, but
It was kind of a clunky movie.
right, right. So it's his, basically just his rundown of what it was like to go to high school in I don't remember, early 80s. So that book gets made into this movie. And I mean, the book is not well revered, but I guess it's not printed anymore because it like shows up on eBay for like $200.
Yeah, it was like $230 on Amazon.
So
So Cameron Crowe is 63 years old, so he would have been in high school in like the 70s.
okay, yeah. So I mean,
Not too far
this
off.
movie, this movie was made in '82, which got ruined for me. That we were supposed to play the whole guessing game thing, but yeah. So this was made in '82, and I mean, the story's kind of cool, right? Is 22-year-old goes back to high school and has all these weird experiences with children, but again, it's always weird. It's always an adult interacting with children. What are you doing? Leave the kids alone.
Leave the kids alone.
So, but yeah, I guess the gist of it is that the book's not that good, and her claim was that the movie's way better. But take what you want.
Yeah. So the Nick Cage, we've got some like Nick Cage fact stuff to go along with this film. That he is the nephew of Francis Ford Coppola.
Okay, favorite fact. First favorite fact, completely unrelated, is that Shel Silverstein wrote the song "A Boy Named Sue." Second favorite fact that is quite related is that Francis Ford Coppola, he directs these crazy ass, The Godfather, Apocalypse Now, all these crazy movies. Great, wonderful. Then directs the movie Jack, starring Robin Williams.
Is that weird? I liked that film. I know a lot of people who like
It
that
is
film.
nothing like The Godfather.
No, it certainly is not.
It's like Woody Allen directed Ants.
Is that true?
I know he produced it. or
Okay.
directed it, one of the two. He had, he was in on that. So super weird.
So Nick Cage is going by Nick Coppola at the time, and apparently he was harassed a lot because of this legacy, and basically it was assumed that he didn't have any talent and that he was only there because of his esteemed uncle. So this was the movie that actually inspired him to change his name to Nicolas Cage, which I personally think is a better name, but that's just me.
It's fewer letters,
That's true.
which is pretty good.
Yes.
So I mean, I get it, right? If like my last name is Obama or something, and I'm trying to make it at some law firm in Chicago, I'm probably going to catch some shit from people who are thinking the only reason I'm in there is because my dad. Have you heard of Barack?
Barack Obama?
Yeah. Do you know who?
I think so.
So
It sounds familiar.
it's the same. It's the you don't ever want to you're living in the shadow of some famous ass
lawyer?
relative or like lawyer.
Mhm.
Like you don't want that. So I get wanting to change your name, and I guess it worked for him. I mean, he's made 100 movies
104,
so far,
and we're just chipping away.
little by little.
Mm.
So yeah, I don't think I really have anything else to say about this one. I mean, it was fine. Drink alcohol. Watch it.
Yeah, if you're
Like-
inspired, like many of our listeners from the last one, if you're inspired to actually watch this film,
Get drunk.
yeah,
Or,
stoned.
Yeah, smoke
For
marijuana.
sure.
They smoke marijuana in this movie, and
A
that's
lot.
actually one of the good lines. Is Sean Penn Jeff Spicoli, smokes a bunch of marijuana and then hits himself on the head with a shoe, which I wouldn't have known that part. I thought he like knocked on his head or something, but the line still holds. It's a really great line. And he says, "That's my freaking skull." Great
Yeah,
line.
Great line.
Yeah, I think his lines were the only memorable lines from this movie at all. I mean, his talking about a wave and says, "Hey, bud, let's party," and all the shit that he talks to the teacher guy and
Mr.
Yeah.
Hand.
yeah, all that stuff. Like, I don't think anyone else really had like quotable lines necessarily. I mean, this is a Sean Penn movie
Yeah.
that happens to involve some other people doing other things, but
Mhm.
it's really just framed around let's laugh at this surfer kid, which oh man, I'm not going to not tell you this.
Okay.
In the book, so the book is based on a true story. It's like a fictionalized like framework, not necessarily it's not told like from like a journalistic perspective. And I think he probably did it that way to like protect people from like telling too much about them, but it's a fictionalized version. But the Spicoli kid in the movie is like mild compared to the crazy shit that the book one does. But I guess in the book, this kid's family dies in like a fiery car wreck or something crazy, and the next day Spicoli comes running into one of the classrooms with a newspaper. And he's like, "Look at these gnarly photos of this car wreck, everybody." And he's like, this is crazy. And like the kid just starts crying.
Oh, wow.
So like kind of a different angle on that character for the book. Much more brutal.
Ugh. Yeah. Well, I mean, still just kind of that like very, like not knowing what's going on.
Right.
And not being aware of your surroundings at all.
Way too much 14-year-old weed smoking.
Yeah. It's not good for your brain development, kids.
Yeah. Stay off drugs until you are 27 years old.
Yes. Also, tell your friends about the podcast.
Yeah. Spread the word, tell a friend, share it if you feel compelled. If not, don't.
We are at Side Attendant on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and we are now on YouTube if that's your jam.
Yeah. And I guess on YouTube it's a little bit unique in that you can comment like on the individual episode, whereas like if you're on like a regular podcast player, all you can really do there is leave a review. So if you don't know, find us on Facebook. That's where we seem to be kind of interacting with people the most here.
And if you feel so inclined, definitely rate us and leave us a review. We are on Spotify, Stitcher, and Apple Podcasts officially.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we're on all the other minor podcast players as well,
Right,
but
yeah.
the big ones, we're on all of them. So find us where you find us, and if you're listening to us right now, you probably found us somewhere. So
True. But tell a friend. Tell your mom.
yeah, moms have seemed to like us a lot so far. I know
My
my
mom's a
mom.
fan.
Yeah, our moms are cool.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Other people's moms have talked to us.
Yeah, so
Said
tell
that
your
they dig
mom.
it. Yeah, tell your mom. She'll like it.
Yeah.
Love you. Bye.